2 short months. Prior to that, I was the assistant county attorney for 4 years. I've been an attorney for 12 now. Done a lot of different things as an attorney, basically general practice. I still have my own private practice too, but I do part-time for the county as the county attorney, administering the office, giving all of the civil advice to the county offices and boards, and then I do all the mental health, substance abuse committals, and children needing assistance and delinquency, which are minors committing crimes. So I came here today because my understanding you guys wanted just a little refresher or education on your function as a board, different things that rules, laws that you have to adhere to. So I thought I would just start with a great resource for this, if you haven't looked at this, is the board member handbook. And this is going to be about everything I cover in here today is going to be in here. And I didn't thoroughly look at this until about a day ago, and I wish I would have, because it basically laid out everything I was going to talk about that I found in different areas. Just to start out with, the conservation boards, I should say, are created by statute, meaning the legislature created county conservation boards. Within that, there's a code chapter, it's called Chapter 350, tells what the purpose of a county conservation board is and what the role is. And I did bring a copy of that for you guys, if you want to take one and pass it around. It just talks about what the duties are, powers and duties, your meetings, who can be on the board, how those people get appointed, and how you can use your money in it, some other things. If you want to take a more thorough look at that. So, one of the things that in Chapter 350, that because you are a county board, right, all county boards, whether you're the conservation board, the board of supervisors, the examining board, the compensation board, you are required to have open meetings. What does that mean? Okay. First of all, a meeting is a quorum of your members. So that's a majority, right? So if you have a 5-member board, that's 3 people. When you have,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Is this a meeting of the board?
it is a meeting of the board and a notice was given, I believe.
A notice was given, but that had some email exchanges with Travis and some things came up, so I was digging in 350, and what came up in 350.3 paragraph 2 was that Travis, which 3 members of the board asked for this meeting?
Can we leave public comment or questions till the end, and then if you guys want to entertain
Well,
that?
I guess my point is that it may be noticed, but if it wasn't properly called, maybe they don't want to do this.
What is the code?
I have it here if you want me to bring it up.
Or where is it at, Mary?
350.3, meetings, records, annual report, paragraph 2.
So do you want me here, is the question, is there special meetings called by the president, and are there a request from the majority of the members for me to be here today to talk about this?
Okay, so the way I read this, I guess, to make it public, I did not call this meeting, like it states here. But I'm all right with the meeting.
You agreed to it a couple months ago. I brought it up several different times requesting this, and nobody was opposed to it. And then I specifically asked Tom if we still wanted to move forward with it, and said yes. So,
I'm just,
Tom never asked me if,
I'm all right with the meeting, and yes, you did ask me. I did not know that this was procedure. I will be the first to admit.
how did you hear about it?
it's in 350, how did I hear about the meeting?
Yeah.
it's a-
Travis sent me the agenda, and I asked him some questions. It's properly noticed, but I don't know if being a special meeting, it was called in accordance with 350. Now, if there's another section in code somewhere, which,
I haven't seen the agenda, was it part of the meeting?
It was a special session.
Special session, okay.
I guess, I'm all right with it, but I did not call the meeting. You asked me about it. I will not deny that by no meaning, but I did not call a meeting, and I did not have 3 members, what it states here, supporting it. Now, you can ask the board, do we have the support to go on? But it's probably not done by procedure, by no means. And I appreciate you bringing it to my attention. How do we move on, Katie?
It's up to you what you want to do. Right, the code says special meetings may be called by the president and shall be called on request of the majority of members as the necessity may require. I did not look at the agenda, so I don't know what was stated besides what Travis has told me now. There isn't going to be any, to my understanding, any formal action taken here by the board today. There was notice given to the public, and if no board member is opposed to it happening now, I'm not sure what the potential harm would be. But it is a law. If you want to follow the law to the T of what it is, then you can say you don't have a meeting. However, right, I just don't see at this point how there's any harm from it when it's been noticed, the public has been notified that they can attend and that nobody here is objecting to it.
Probably one of the biggest things here is probably one of our biggest failures is not knowing the rights and wrongs of everything. So, and there's nothing wrong, because I just was not aware of it.
This is just one of those things that we did not know, just like a few others.
Yeah.
So we haven't, we don't know.
That's kind of the whole reason I wanted to have some type of meeting, is so we can learn all these little things.
I think,
Make mistakes.
obviously, we didn't go correct procedure to get here, but I think we're here. It's quite a day to get here, and it's hard to get this to really, can we go on with it? We really have it.
Yeah, I mean, what I think this meeting, or the statute is trying to intend to do is if you're gonna take action, right, on something, you're gonna make a decision, right, then, and you're gonna go by special session, and bring everybody out for an additional board meeting, right, which we're not really doing today either, because my understanding is you're already gonna be here at 3 o'clock for your regular meeting, correct? That you make sure that everybody, or you have a quorum, what does it say?
Yep, 3 members.
Quorum, yeah, majority of members agree to do that.
So from this point forward, it is my job to make sure that this is followed. If we're gonna have a special session meeting.
Correct.
And that, I've always emailed or texted you to confirm a date and things, and I thought that was enough to consider it being called by the board chair.
Never seen the 3 people.
Well, I think that's either or, isn't it? The board chair can call it or the 3
It should,
quorum.
it may be called by the president. Okay,
So
so,
that means it can be just you or 3 members.
yeah, and
Either one.
shall be called on the request of the majority of members. So it's the president may do it or the majority of 3 members. So it doesn't have to be both, you're right. When you read that, it's not and as both have to happen, it's
It's one or the other, am I wrong?
Yeah. It's a may be called, so if the president requests it, it may be called by the president and shall be called on the request of the majority of members as the necessity of business may require. So, you have to have a meeting when the majority of you request it. The president, special meetings may be called by the president, means the president, I think, can do it, doesn't have to, though.
If there's a majority of the members, the way I'm reading it. they can
Right, if
actually-
3 people want to have a meeting on your board, you're exactly right, that
They can call.
they can call it and have to have a meeting.
So answer this question for me. How can you do that? Because you're not supposed to talk about, that's a moving meeting.
I think.
Sorry,
Yes.
these are things that get thrown at us.
I think it would be, and I'm just trying,
I've always thought that should be communication back to me, out to the board members.
right, but you would think that naturally it would happen that 3 people would want a meeting on the same subject, right? And
Have to
so,
do it one at a time.
Unless it was something discussed at another meeting, and then they said we want to have a special session on this date.
I'm just trying to think of situations, yeah, where it may come up, like if there's some sort of problem or issue going on, you may have board members, multiple saying, Travis, we need to have a meeting. And he said, well, 3 people have now said that to me. So is that under this code section? Do you need to have a meeting? I'd say yes, because on the request as a majority of the members. So if the majority of the members are contacting Travis saying, we need to have a meeting about this, then Travis, you prepare all the notices. Yeah. Then Travis, under the law, says, I got a majority of members of the board requesting this, we gotta have a meeting. So I think that's how I foresee it coming. I think, arranging date and time is not in violation, right? Just to talk about when can we have this meeting? And so that may come up as that too, is that we need a meeting, when's the date and time? And then the actual substance of everything is discussed after the meeting. Any other, does that? It does, unfortunately the law is not always black and white, and doesn't always, the law that we have doesn't always fit our needs or do what it's supposed to do, because it's written by a lot of people that aren't actually carrying out those laws a lot of times. So, not all the time, but I did work for the legislature for a while, and I can tell you a little bit. So, going on, so we were talking about having an open meeting. An open meeting is required when you have a majority of members. And you're going to discuss anything that you exercise judgment over in the conservation board. So really when you're thinking about it, if you're going to be with yourself and 2 of the other members, you should not be discussing conservation topics, okay? Because that could be construed as an open meeting. So that is something that you need to stay away from. There's nothing in the law preventing you from talking to another board member about it, one. But when you get that second one in there, then there's 3 of you, and that's a quorum, that's a majority under the law. And that cannot happen. And this includes emails, phone calls, text messages, Zoom conferences, video conferences now that we have. It doesn't have to be in person to be an open meeting. It can be one of those other means of communication. It does say, the law does say that you can share relevant information on a topic without the intent to avoid open meeting laws. So just an example I thought of is maybe there's an email you received from the DNR or somebody at the DNR about some law changes that are happening. Okay, and that will affect the conservation board, or maybe some of the land that you own. Okay, and you could probably send that email out, right? Saying, here's information about some law changes that are coming to all the board members. But what you then cannot do is email back to that, right? And start having a discussion back and forth between 3 or more people. Um, So it's a fine line, and it's really hard to tell sometimes what's in the meeting and what's not. So if you're concerned, the best thing is just to leave it to the meeting. Like I said, the problem is sometimes there's information you need to review before the meeting that, you know, is going to be pertinent to a topic or something you want to learn about, and maybe you think it's important for other board members to learn about. And like I said, the law says you can share that information, you just can't engage in discussion about it between.
So would the support documents for the meeting be okay to email out before the meeting?
I think so, if there's something that's going to be discussed, right?
Because usually I send out the old minutes, the agenda, and then if there's a support document or something.
Behind that agenda.
Right.
Agenda items.
Right.
Just so everybody can review it ahead of the meeting, and then we discuss it at the top.
Right, it's, like I said, it's when you respond back to that email to 3 or 4 people and you start having a conversation about it, that's when you're violating the open meeting law. That conversation, discussion is supposed to be saved for the meeting, for the public to hear. And you know, just to back up a little bit, the whole idea behind open meetings really comes back to, you know, 1776, when people were not involved in the government and weren't made known of what was going on. So it really came from, you know, the founding fathers. I think one of them, the quote I read from this was that the liberties of people never were nor ever will be secure when the transactions of their rulers may be concealed from them. And that was said by Patrick Henry. Henry was one of the guys that signed the Declaration of Independence. So the idea that it's county conservation, it doesn't seem like big means, does it, sometimes, but it's important. It's taxpayers' money you're spending, it's public lands you're deciding about, so it's important for public to be involved and have comment on that. So once you have a meeting that's going to happen, you have to have public notice. And that includes a written agenda that has to be posted in a prominent place accessible to the public at least 24 hours prior. Okay? It also has to be sent or emailed to anyone who has requested it. So if one of the newspapers, TV channels wants your agenda, wants notice of when your next meeting is, they have to, if they have to be emailed it 24 hours prior. The agenda on it has to have the topics on it that you're going to discuss. If it's on the agenda, you cannot discuss it. Okay, so if there's something that kind of comes out of something else you're talking about, you know, sometimes that happens if we're talking about one thing and then that leads to another. When it leads to another, you got to be done because it's not on your agenda. What's on your agenda can be talked about. What is not, cannot. It's got to wait till another meeting.
Can it be talked about but no decisions made?
Technically, it's not, you know, the other thought behind having an agenda is that keeps your meeting orderly, right? And that you only discuss the topics that are on there, and that way you conserve, hopefully, everybody's time and resources that they have to give to it. You know, if it's not on the agenda, I would stay away from it. And wait until the next meeting, ask for it to be put on the agenda for the next meeting. As part of open meetings, somebody has to take minutes. Those minutes, at a minimum, have to have date, time, and place of meeting, the members present, and the action taken at the meeting. So if you take a vote on something, or a resolution is passed, those things all need to be noted in the minutes. Also, public records requests are something that goes along with government offices. The public has a right to request records. That includes emails, text messages, records, logs of phone calls, any documents. And those are public records even if sent from your private email, your private phone. You have to produce those. So when you're using your phone to communicate, or you're using your private email, know that if somebody asks for a records request on a certain topic that deals with conservation, you're gonna have to go through your email or your phones and dig out everything you have and produce those. If you have questions about whether you have to produce those under the law, there are some exceptions. You can feel free to contact our office and ask about those. But know if you're talking in generally about the conservation board or specific topic, it's very likely that the text messages, the emails, those things, you're gonna have to show. Does anybody have any questions about any of those things that I've talked about?
So in other words, like a meeting, I guess you could go to a closed session unless it's listed on there that.
Yeah, and I was just gonna talk about that, that next, closed session. And I brought, the listing of those too, about, what the code says you can go into a closed session, so I'll.
Before we go to closed session.
Sure.
I would like to go back to the special meeting request.
Sure.
What does it take to have a special meeting? What, I mean, any reason? Is there specific things you can call a special meeting on?
I think, you know, within this code section, it doesn't talk about anything about what constitutes a special meeting, okay? So I think it can be about anything. I think, you know, obviously you want to conserve those to when you actually need them, because I know that most of you probably have other lives, you work, family. Nobody wants to be coming to a special meeting 3 times a month in addition to their board meeting duties, especially when nobody's getting paid and doing this because they're volunteer and want to see conservation thrive, do better, you know, whatever the situation is. So I don't think there's any special, you know, special is not defined. I think it's supposed to be, really those meetings are supposed to be for when there's something that comes up and you need a decision on it before the next board meeting. Those are usually when those come to light that you need to have those meetings. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any other questions right now? Okay. Okay, so I was going to talk about closed meetings. Closed meetings obviously are a meeting that is closed to the public. So it's not like this meeting where anybody can come and observe and listen to what's being said. You can only do closed meetings for certain reasons. 21.5, this is from the Iowa Code. This lists reasons why you can have a closed session. Starting under number 1, and then it's A through L, okay, are the exceptions or reasons why you can have a closed meeting. Most common ones are employee review, to discuss litigation, sale of real estate, or purchase of real estate. Those are the most common that we see. There's other, obviously, reasons listed within the code that you can have a closed meeting. To get into a closed meeting, right, you have to follow the law on it. And there has to be a motion to go into a closed meeting, okay? So that's the first step. And then the second step is you have to meet this criteria under one of these code sections, okay? So So 1J, which is about halfway down the page, to discuss the purchase or sale of particular real estate, only where premature disclosure could be reasonably expected to increase the price the governmental body would have to pay for that property, or the price the governmental body would receive for that property. The minutes and audio recording of the session closed under this paragraph shall be available for public examination when the transaction discussed is completed. So that's going to cover a lot of a lot of times when you're either buying or selling property, as the county. However, it might be a situation where you own a piece of land that is contaminated with oil, and it's gonna take far more money to clean it up than it is to purchase it, right? Probably not gonna need a closed meeting for that, because there's probably not too many buyers on the market, and you're probably not looking at selling it for a lot. But most other situations, you can probably meet the closed meeting on that, because obviously the intent is for the county to get a fair market value on that piece of land, okay, or have the opportunity to get a fair market value. Another one would be, I, which is to evaluate the professional competency of an individual whose appointment, hiring, performance, or discharge is being considered when necessary to prevent needless and irreparable injury to that individual's reputation, and that individual requests a closed session. So, when we're talking about employee reviews, many times, or you're going to talk about an employee's performance, and maybe there's going to be some negative things in that, right? That is when, if the employee requests it, and you know that there may be something that could lead to irreparable injury, needless and irreparable injury to the individual's reputation, you have to have a closed meeting, okay? As a matter of legal advice, in general, you shouldn't be discussing negative employee performance in a board meeting, in an open board meeting. Why? Because that exposes the county and you as the conservation board to liability and lawsuits. Okay? It really leads to unhappy employees. It leads to potential lawsuits where people are claiming discrimination, maybe on one reason or the other. It is not best practices. Our other attorney in our office, Paul, he practiced employment law for quite some time. And so I consulted with him on this issue because he represented employers that were getting sued quite often. That was his main job for quite some time. And he said, you should never, if you're able to have those meetings in private, which under the law we are, if the employee requests it, you should be having those meetings in private. You do not want to be airing people's ill performance in front of others, because it's only going to lead to more issues. So if there's something that you want to review, and really, your job as the board is to employ the director, and the director's job is to manage the employees. If you're not happy with the way the director is doing that, what's your remedy? You fired the director. Sorry, Travis, to put you on the spot there, but that's how the board is set up, is that you employ the board, you make the policy, you employ the director, you make the policy. If you don't like the way the director's carrying policy out, right, then you're free to fire the director. However, the day-to-day management of the employees, that's what your director is there for. So that would be my advice, and that's my advice to any board, any county office, is that if it's possible, under the law, following the law, those things are not done in open meetings.
I got a question.
Sure.
On that, what happens if for this board, the only person we review is the director? And what happens if they request not going into closed session?
So if they don't...
As a board, are we allowed to take it to closed session?
No. So under the law, there is no requirement for closed session, okay? It doesn't have to happen, right? and in that specific situation, yes, if the employee does not request it, then you don't have to go into closed session. However, again, as legal advice, before you have that meeting with that employee, I would sit that employee down and say, we're gonna discuss your performance. You do have a right to ask for a closed session. If you would like to do that, you just need to tell us in the meeting. Because then you give that person the knowledge and the opportunity to do it, right? And if they don't request it, then, that shifts the burden more on them. Well, you knew you had the opportunity to request that closed meeting, and you didn't do it.
But how does that protect the board and the county if it stays in open session?
Right, that's the thing, right? I think most people, though, do most people want to be, talked about the poor job performance in front of the public? I think most people, in my experience, when given that option, are going to request a closed meeting. And there are a few outliers that have not, but like I said, in my experience, and also just employing people, they don't want people to know what's going on, right? Or have that discussed in front of people that they know, or the newspaper, or whoever it may be. Did that answer your question?
For now,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome. So getting back to the closed meetings, we talked about, that there has to be a motion. You have to meet one of the requirements in this code section. Once you get into the meeting, it has to be recorded. Audio recording is fine. There has to be scrupulous meetings taken, so you're supposed to write down everything that you can try to write down during that meeting. And no action is allowed to be taken in the meeting. Okay, so you can have the discussion about it, and you can only discuss the reason you're in there for the closed meeting, right? So you're not allowed to discuss other things in the closed meeting. It's only the reason why you are there. But once you come out of that closed meeting, that's where you take the action. Okay, so if you are in that closed meeting on an employee performance, and you decide that the employee is going to be, it's the director, and the director is going to be fired, you would come out of that meeting, make that motion, somebody would second it, there would be a vote, and that action would be done, right? But nobody's going to know what was said in the meeting. Those minutes can become public. Like I said, there are some exceptions within this 21.5 that says when they do. But if there's not that exception, they only come to the public by court order, meaning the judge has said they have to be released. So you as the board members are not allowed to discuss with the members of the public what is said in that closed session, or anybody, your family, your friends. That is not allowed. Anybody have any more questions about closed sessions? If you need to have a closed session, I would advise you guys to contact our office and we can help you through that process so you know. Because obviously closed session doesn't happen a lot. It's not something that you need on a yearly basis, maybe even on every 2 years. But when you do need it, you need to make sure that it's done right. So our job as a county attorney's office is to advise all the boards and the county offices. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to work for you guys. So don't be afraid to call with questions. We're happy to try and answer them as best as we can and to address whatever need you guys have. The closed meetings, so why does it matter what happens? The Iowa Public Information Board, they are over, the agency that's over regulating closed meetings, okay? And their job is to make sure that all of our county boards throughout Iowa and all of the state boards throughout Iowa and any governmental body that is having a meeting is adhering to the meeting rules. And I shouldn't say just say closed session, I should say all meeting rules, like posting the notice, agenda, those things that I talked about previously too. So the Iowa Public Information Board, if you're not following the rules and there's a complaint, or they on themselves can initiate a complaint against you, can assess damages, void actions that you've taken, undo what you've done as a board, and they can take any other appropriate remedial action. They can also remove repeat violators from boards. So if you are found to have broken rules or broken laws more than one occasion, they can remove you from the board. So that's why it's important, because if you don't follow these rules, ultimately, not only does it cost you the board's integrity, it can cost your agency money, and you could be removed. Anybody have any questions about that? Just going back a little bit, and I talked about this somewhat, but the board member handbook talks really about what the board's duties are, and that's really developing policies for the county on conservation, right? And goals that you want to meet, or things that you want to do. So the beauty of the board member is that you get to come and decide, hey, this is what we want to see happen, and then tell your director to do it, right? You don't have to be the day-to-day person making the phone calls, writing the emails, out there tearing up the dirt to plant other type of prairie grass. That's on your board member. But you guys get to say, hey, we want another lake, we want more prairie land, we want more recreation for families. You get to make those decisions, and then use the director, tell the director to start implementing those. This Iowa Association of County Conservation Boards board member handbook talks about that pretty in-depthly, and has a lot of good ideas, a lot of good questions to ask yourself about what you want to see, how you meet those, just different things to think about. Does anybody have any questions about that, or?
What happens if the director don't implement what the board says?
Well, what do you think you can do, based on what I told you?
Well, I fired him.
Yeah, you go fire them, right? And that's what your control is, right? If you don't like what the director is doing or not doing, you as a board no longer have to employ that person, because that's your job, right? Is to employ the director and make policy and have that director carry it out. And it even comes in here about points to help write policy. Policy to me is like a big word, but I mean, it's really like, what do you want to do with the program and conservation board? But it has some good suggestions on that too. Meetings themselves, are you call the president or the chair? President, yeah. So the president's job is to run the meeting, right? And keep an orderly and efficient meeting, keep things moving along. That means sticking to what your agenda is, asking for motions, or making sure you're following the Robert's Rules of Procedure, which most people use. It's kind of hard sometimes because none of us are experts. Well, Rachel Becker, my predecessor, was, because she was a national FFA champion in it, but I am not. So if you have questions about that, she's now my assistant, so she could answer those. But, the meetings, obviously you guys, again, are volunteers. You're not getting paid to be here. And it is best for you guys, to run a meeting that you're not here for 4 or 5 hours, 2 times a month on end. So going through the agenda items, making sure somebody's getting off topic, that, you guys are remembering we're only talking about the agenda items. You as the president can rein that back in, say, hey, we're not going to talk about that right now because it's not on the agenda. But, if you'd like to talk about that next month, we can put it on the agenda and discuss that. that's the fun part, or that part about being president, is sometimes you gotta cut people off. But it also makes the meeting more orderly. Another question we get a lot is about public comment. When do you have to allow it, when do you not? The public actually has no right to speak unless they've been asked to be placed on the agenda. Now, would I advise that? No. I think you do need to have time always to allow public comment. But I think it needs to be in a scheduled place, right? So public, because different people have different thoughts, right? We all have different opinions. And so you don't want to get into a discussion on something that takes up, again, time, when that could have been said at the end of the meeting, right? So public comment, we usually advise, yes, set a time at the end of the meeting, or if you want to do it at the beginning of the meeting. You can set time limits on people about how long they get to talk. But it usually works best for the efficiency and the flow of your meeting to reserve a certain amount of time to allow that to be done. And again, that allows people from the public to comment, ask questions maybe, or give ideas, but it doesn't interrupt the flow of the meeting and getting off track of where you guys need to go and what you need to be discussing each month. And maybe there's something that's brought up in that public comment section that does need to be discussed, and you put that on the agenda for next month.
So with that, I have a question. So the public is able to bring up anything that does or does not pertain to the agenda that we work on, correct?
Right. Now, especially if you can't take action. So let's say somebody says something and the board can then not make a motion and do something on that unless it was already on the agenda, okay? So that, is important to know that even if it's something like, oh my gosh, we gotta do something right away, you're gonna have to schedule another meeting if it wasn't on the agenda and to do something about it.
Would you do public comment or visitor comment in the beginning and in the end?
I think that's up to, what you guys want to do. If you do split it up, I guess what I would say is make sure, and I don't know if anybody abuses this, if you have somebody that comes and talks for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that a time limit would be appropriate, maybe, and that depends on the board and how much public comment you're getting, I guess. We haven't had a lot of issues with that within the Wright County, just as far as people talking for a long time. But if you set a policy that, everybody's gonna get the chance to speak, but you will have 3 minutes, then, and people then know, then too, hey, I've only got this 3 minutes to talk, so I need to use it wisely, and they're prepared for that as well, as opposed to, oh, well, nobody's gonna cut me off, so I can just talk as long as I want, and it doesn't really have to be me prepared.
So do we then set the policy of what we want to see, the board?
Yes, yes. And I'm not aware of any bylaws that the board has to follow, but that's something that can be established in bylaws, or can be established by a policy about how long you want people to be able to talk.
I just hate to put the visitor comments at the end of a meeting. If they would like to make a comment and leave, they can, but what I don't want to see is visitor comments on my agenda before we even get there.
Right. And it's kind of a double-edged sword,
It is.
It's, what do you do? I mean, board of supervisors doesn't make public comment till the end.
Right.
And I think it just, like you said, it's kind of a double-edged sword on what you want to do. You can take it at the beginning and the end, but then
More time.
it takes time, yeah. Conflict of interest. Conflict of interest is something that you have to be aware of as a governmental board member or office holder like myself or employee. A conflict of interest is basically that you're going to be able to make a decision on something that you're going to have a personal interest in or a financial gain. So if there's going to be a vote on something, that you have interests that you're going to personally benefit, or maybe you're going to be personally hurt by that, right? Or financially hurt by that, you should abstain from voting. And it's not, sometimes we think, me including, well, I know I have that conflict of interest, but I can set that aside and vote on this, and that's okay. That's not the way the law works. The law is that it's an objective, it's an outsider looking in. It's not whether you yourself can decide, I can set that issue to the side and make a reasonable decision with this without my interest affecting it. Doesn't matter if you think you can do that, or even if you can do that, it doesn't matter. You don't get to make that decision. I was just trying to think of like some examples, because easy examples are your cousins. You guys have to hire a new director, and it's your cousin. That's something that you should abstain from voting on, right? Any relative, close friend, if they're asking or interviewing for the job, something that you should just stay away from and definitely not vote on, right? When it comes to that person. If, another example I was thinking of, like, if you're gonna expand the lake at Mill Creek, right? And maybe you have a property that if they expanded the lake, then your property is, let's say it's your house, would be on the lakefront. And you would really like that, right? Because you like the lake and you like seeing it, and you could walk outside your door or look out your window every day and get to see that lake. You can't vote on that, right? The other thing is, like, maybe that's not what you want either, right? Because you don't want that lake there or it to expand, because you know there's gonna be a lot more people around your house and you don't want that. And again, that's something that you should abstain from voting on because you have a personal interest. Same with financial interest, you know, that same example. Let's say, you know, property values are gonna go up because people are gonna wanna live where you're living because they get to see the lake, right? You should not be voting on whether to expand that lake or not. Because you have a personal or a financial interest, or same thing, if you know that your property value is going to go down, because now there's going to be this lake there, and for some reason that's going to cause the value to go down. Not something that you should be voting on. Appearances are a big thing, right? And I would always err on the side of caution, right? Be more concerned about it than less concerned about it. If it's going to appear to the public like you're getting some sort of special treatment or benefit from it, and it might not even be a conflict of interest, step away from it. Step away from it and don't vote on it. Because all that causes is more concern and disruption in the public about the integrity of the board and members on it.
Do you have to state, I'm not voting due to a conflict of interest when the vote does come up, or how do they go about that?
Usually that's what happens, is people say, I'm abstaining from voting due to my conflict. So that's usually the way that I've seen it, yeah, taken care of.
Are the minutes supposed to state who voted yes, who voted no?
Yes, it depends whether you do a roll call, right? So if you do a roll call, the president's going to call on each of you to say, you know, yay or nay. And I think yes, I would say in this situation that you've always want to take a roll call.
When does the president vote? Just only he can vote when he breaks the tie?
I think the president always votes. Do you guys have any, or what, do you have a bylaw on that? No.
That came from Barb, she told us that it should only be in a tiebreaker.
Oh, really? Okay. But the president is the fifth member, right? Yeah. Okay. I'll have to ask her about that, because I wasn't aware of that. I thought everyone voted.
Robert's Rules of Order says groups under 20. The
Under
president
20.
always vote. That's Robert's.
See, if Rachel was here, she would have known that, and I don't.
Also, Sheldon School Board meetings, if you have something to say, they hit the roll call, they have 5 minutes before the meeting starts out. I'm not saying it's the rule, but Sheldon School Board does it right before the meeting.
Right.
Micah Screws just ruled that a 5-person council, the mayor never votes. If it does not get a majority of votes of those present, it fails.
What was that?
For a 5-person city council, the mayor never votes. So if there's only 4 council members present and it's a 2-2 vote, it fails because it didn't get a majority. That just came out for an Archer thing 2 or 3 months ago.
Interesting.
We probably ought to figure out, Katie, what our,
Yeah, what you guys want to do on that and what you're allowed to do under the law. And I can look at that. 'Cause that's an interesting,
right now, in the last year or year and a half, it's been, the president didn't vote unless it was a tie.
okay.
I'm not saying that we were right, but that's the way it's been.
Okay, I'll look at that. That is all that I had today. Was there anything else?
I have a couple of questions.
Sure. I'll try to answer them.
So, being a member of the community and having a business and being involved with a lot of people, how, like if I have a customer appreciation and there's 4 of these board members that come to it, as long as we're not discussing anything to do with conservation, there is no problem with that, is that correct?
Right.
Okay, secondly, my other question is, if we all attend an event that is put on by conservation, as long as we are not discussing business, are we allowed to attend that event?
Yes.
Are we allowed to talk to each other?
Yes. I mean,
As long as we're not discussing business, we can be seen in the same place.
right.
Okay.
That is
Those are my
fine.
questions.
Right. Anybody else have any other questions? Well, thank you for having me here today, and I'll look at that issue of the president voting. Like I said,
Do we ask the public for questions?
was that on your agenda?
It is not.
Do you have a,
We've got the regular session next.
yeah, I guess, my job is not to advise the public or answer questions, my job is to advise you. So if the public asks you questions, and then you want answers to them, legal answers, I'm happy to give you legal advice, so. And again, just so you're clear, that is what I am to do, is to give you advice, right? You do not have to take my advice. A lot of times I would strongly suggest you take my advice, but at the end of the day, it's up to the board and the decision, or the officer, whoever it is that I'm giving the advice to about whether they want to take it or not.
I just don't have a question about this president, nobody, if there's a tie vote and it's a decision to buy something, the tie vote, you never buy it, right? It stays at a tie vote?
Well, so what Travis was saying is Barb had said the president votes if it is a tie, correct?
Okay, the break.
It's a tiebreaker.
To break the tie?
Yeah, what member of the public was saying is that that's not the way city council in Sheldon handles it, which I don't know, because I'm not involved with that, how they handle it or how they don't, but.
Otherwise, it'd be a stalemate. If half the board says to buy a vehicle and half says yes, half says no, there was a stalemate and we can't buy anything.
Right.
You can't have that because you want to proceed.
Right, it seems like we would need to have some sort of
Right.
way to proceed.
Okay.
So I'll look into that and I'll let you guys know.
I got a couple other questions too, I guess. So on our job descriptions and stuff, everything kind of goes down the line that the board hires the director hires all the employees underneath, that everything is overseen by the board. That is how it states.
Right, you create policy, right? And to my mind, that you create the policy, you hire the director, you tell the director what you want your policy to be, and you let the director implement, right? If it's not being done the way you want it to be done, then you're addressing that with the director, you know, I'm not seeing X, Y, Z. We wanted more grassland, prairie land, that's not happening, tell me why, you know? And I think probably some of the idea behind that is, again, you're volunteers, you're not being paid to do this, that's the job of the director, but you're there to oversee the director, and that the director isn't doing their job, right? Other questions?
I'm good.
Yeah, if you don't have this, do you want a copy of it? I can get you a copy of it. You got it. Answers a lot of questions in there, and things that you're supposed to be doing. It's a nice resource we ever put it together with the Iowa Association of County Conservation Groups. But, yes, I was happy to come here today. I'm always happy to answer questions. Feel free to call our office. Travis has my email. I'm happy to answer questions as they come up.
So we as board members are also able to call you and ask questions?
Right, I advise the board, right? So I don't advise you individually. So sometimes I get questions about, well, what should I do in kind of more of a personal sense? And I said, I can't give you that advice, right? I can advise you as an official in your official capacity, but I cannot give you individual advice as opposed from one board member to another or one employee to another. I can only give you legal advice in your official capacity. So that's where the line is drawn. And sometimes, again, that gets a little murky about where that line is at. But we try our best. Anything else?
That is it.
Okay.
I think most importantly, you need to drive very safely home.
Yes. I don't want to end up like that semi north of here, or east of here, that's in the jackknife of the ditch.
Where did you see that?
A guy stopped me on the road about a mile before I got here and said, "Are you going to Peterson?" And I said, "No, I'm going to the Prairie Heritage." And he said, "Good, because there's a semi half in the ditch, half in the road on the hill going down to Peterson."
Oh, that would be really,
Yeah.
that would be bad.
That skill officer is bad too.
Yes, it was. I had to slow down to
Yes.
about 15.
Be very, very careful going home. I appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you.
Do I have to
It
adjourn?
was nice meeting everyone.
Nice meeting you, Pete. Do I need to adjourn that?
We probably should adjourn that one and start with the other one.
Do I have a motion to adjourn our 2 o'clock?
I'll make the motion to return.
Teamer. Jack, motion to adjourn. Dan seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carried. Okay, do we want to take a little break? Does anybody need to go to the restroom or anything? Sarah, you good? Okay. Let's move on. Yeah. All right, so call the meeting to order. It is March 9th, 2023 at 3:07 PM. We're at the Joint County Conservation meeting, regular session. Has everybody had time to review the minutes from February 8th, first of all? The regular session meeting? And if so, I will take a motion to pass them. Dan, Greg, any further discussion on the minutes? All in favor, say aye. Opposed, same sign, motion carried. Then we have a special session after that. February 8th. I would entertain a motion to approve that also.
I'll second it.
Dan, Greg. All in favor, say aye. Both same sign, motion carried. Okay, review of the bills. Do I have any questions on the bills after you have reviewed them? Travis, do you have any input on the bills? Have anything out of the ordinary?
Mill Creek water was a little high, that was that water leak that I told you about a while back. Otherwise, the ones that are highlighted are paid. And then we should have, we didn't get to the top.
It should be. Yes, we did. That's, yep, that's
That's all
all.
I did.
The Mid-American for here will be coming probably tomorrow. That's the yellow.
Otherwise, that Kramer Designs, the final payment for that one, the $6,000 came from there. And I think everything else was fairly straightforward.
So how many dollars does that put to that Kramer so far?
That's over 37,000. So thanks, 37,500 is the total amount from, before I started here, there was an $11,000 payment or $13,000 payment then, up through all of our payments. This is the final one for the product. I have the initial sketches of the final design. He's still got a few more things to send me for the completed design. But it's just kind of the initial layout of all the notes that we talked about in that committee meeting and sent out.
So it's getting changed then according to that committee?
Yeah, according to what we decided then. And then once I get that next set, we'll have another committee meeting to go over everything. And go from there with any changes that we want. So,
Does anybody else have any questions? And I will entertain a motion to approve the bills.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Pose same sign, motion carried. Old business.
all right, so the Belmont Park property, I just kind of want to know how to proceed with that. Last I heard, we had discussed a while back a potential option to buy or option to purchase. They got back to me and said that they would do that if we put $13,500 down. That would be non-refundable if we couldn't purchase the property. And then they also want basically the same contract signed before we purchase the same. The whole contract that we went over a few months ago, they would want that all signed as well. So I guess I just want to know how to proceed, whether we want to try and move forward with something like that, or drop it and move, go a different direction, and say we can revisit it later if we can do a more open discussion or how we want to do it.
I move we just drop it and leave that. Have a survey and leave it the way the pegs are. That's what we don't.
Well, so the pegs are off, as the surveyor said, they're off all the way around.
About 20 feet.
So the best thing, what he recommended is to basically just have it rewritten that the fence line is the property line all the way around the park. And by Iowa code, that is the way it should be. Because it's been like that since 1970. And if it hasn't been disputed in 10 years, the fence line is the property line.
That's all we can do then. Fence line, and
That was the surveyor's recommendation, is to go with the fence line and just have it rewritten to state that. And
I need a motion for that.
you need a motion to drop it and leave it at the fence line, stands there boundary.
Okay, so Greg's got a motion on the table that at the present time, we're going to just keep the fence lines as the boundaries. And I don't know if you want something in there to revisit it later.
That's all we can do. Just gotta
yeah,
leave it at that, but if we'll revisit later if we need to.
but we don't want to move forward with the purchase, correct?
And I think, talking to you before, Travis, you don't think we can buy it square off the back if it's either worth an option of going after?
Yeah, I've questioned it several different times and they haven't
You want that in your motion? or-
Yeah, I think we should have an motion that they come forward and agree to sell us to square it off, we would revisit it.
And that would be like 2.2 acres, I believe.
I would leave it, throw it out there.
Yeah, definitely.
So Greg, you're gonna make a motion that, at the present time, the board will entertain purchasing, squaring off the west fence line.
Yes.
Or leaving the property line where the fence lines are, either one.
That's the way it should be.
Who's writing that up? That sounds good. Sarah's got it. Is there any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor say aye. Wait a minute.
Yes,
Wait a minute. I got Greg as a first, I need a second. Ian? Sorry about that. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Motion carried. Okay, new business.
All right, so you all have this proposal that I drew up for the new Waterman property. Looking at getting the Habitat Stamp Committee to agree to removing the Habitat Stamp restrictions if we can purchase another 160 acre property to move into. So I just wanted to get that approved to send off to the committee.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve the animal waterman proposal. I think we've all seen it. Dan makes a motion to approve it. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Jack will second it. Any further discussion on it? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign, motion carried. Number 2.
We have approved the hire of a naturalist. We have offered the position to Lindsay Craig, who was the one that came here and did a presentation. She has accepted at a rate of $41,000 per year. And her start date will be the 27th of this month. So we'll approve that.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the naturalist for hire, Lindsay Craig, at a salary of $41,000 per year, starting on March 27th, 2023. Dan made it. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Greg seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Both same sign, motion carried. Director report.
All right, I have, first off, we had 17 programs in the last month for a total of 648 participants. That's just since the last board meeting from now. We had over 100 people show up at Winter Wonderland. We had 9 volunteers that day, which was great. Eagle Day this last weekend, we had 130 people out here. Just for the Eagle presentation alone, we had 109 people in this room alone. So it was packed. And everybody really liked that presentation. The Eagle was a little jumpy. It was still in training and wanted to move around quite a bit, but she handled it very well. And it was a good day. We had a lot of people do crafts in the basement, and just a lot of people out here.
I'm surprised at the size of chain she had on that eagle.
Yeah. So she tied it to her stand, so because the eagle's blind, but it can still fly. So it kept trying to jump up. So she had it hooked with the chain by its leg on the stand, so it can only move a little bit. But she has a lot of training to do that, so she's the expert. And then the other thing with the programming is I've been working to change the schedule stuff. I'm trying to get it so we give each school a block of time instead of, in the past, it's always just been whenever they call, so we have all these different random programs all around the different schools one at a time. So what I've been doing is going to my main contacts in each school and saying, can we give you this morning, and will you set up all the different schools, all the different classes? And what I've seen so far is it's actually increasing the number of students that we can teach, and it's making things a lot more efficient because, like say HMS, just for the preschool and Head Start, I was going every other week to each, where now I can lump them together, and I'm probably going to get the kindergarten and first grade to jump in on those same days too. So instead of seeing 30 people on one trip, I'll be seeing 150. So just trying to streamline some things and make it a little more efficient for travel time and fuel and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it make it kind of difficult with the differences in age?
Not so much, like with Zion, I'm going all the way from preschool to 6th grade. And I basically, this last week, I took the same program in for each one. And you have to adjust it for age groups, but it worked. And I had 2 different programs for them, but it works out. We've got to change the way you talk to the younger kids and the older kids, but and have a little different activity for each, but it works. Otherwise, in the parks, we've been cutting a lot of trees, and mainly a lot of brush and cedar trees. So a lot at Dog Creek. We've got 2 whole hills on the south road that we've cleared the invasive brush and stuff off of.
Made a big difference.
Yeah, it's gonna be really nice. There's actually a lot of remnant prairie left in there. If you get in there and look in the spring, we found a lot of remnant stuff even growing underneath the invasives. So I think once we get that cut and run a little fire through it, we're gonna see a big change in the amount of prairie flowers and things like that popping up. We also cut a bunch of cedar trees back here and burn them, just on the other side of the tree line and on Hannibal property. And then at Dog Creek, we had to cut, we've got a little bit more to do, but we've got to clear the dam off on the opposite side of the road. So there was a dam inspection done, and they told us that we had to clear all of the trees and brush that's on the dam itself. So if you drive down there, you'll see that there's quite a few cottonwoods that we've dropped and put in piles. And then we'll have about 5 trees in the bottom and then a bunch of brush on the hillside that we'll be clearing.
The east side, that's our obligation too?
Yeah. So it's, the dam is basically what the way the DNR put it is we have to manage the dam, even though a little bit of it's not technically our property. I met with the neighbor, the guy that owns that, and he said, cut whatever you want. So we went down and we've only really about half a day there to do what we've done so far, and we've got probably another 2 hours to finish up. It doesn't amount to a lot, but it should satisfy that dam inspection for what they want done. We got both our playgrounds delivered. We've got one for Dog Creek and one for Mill Creek that were ordered a year ago. They were ordered in February, and they finally got delivered. So those will be ready to put in this spring. The Joe Sem project, we've got that on track to basically have all of the infrastructure done hopefully this spring. As long as Osceola Rural Water and Mid-American get their end of it done, we could have that park back open and everything upgraded by mid-May even. So that could go really quick. The only thing we don't have confirmed yet is the shower building and the playground. That's on another grant. So if that grant doesn't come through, then we'll be looking at trying to fund a shower building another way next year probably. But we're going to run the lines over to where the shower building will be for the septic, the water, and the power. So it's all there and ready, even if we can't pay for it yet. And then otherwise, we've done a lot of cabin maintenance this last month, painting, repairing walls, The bins are, every winter, they have a lot of cracks in the walls. When we go in and we repair them, we're covering some of those up with metal now because otherwise we have to do it every year or twice a year to fix those. We fixed some handrails, doors, appliances, and in the 12-person cabins at Mill Creek, we re-epoxied the floors, the concrete floors. So that's all completed. And they are ready to go to do reopening here fairly soon. So. That's all I've got.
I got a question for Dan. Are you still getting the weekly report? No. When did that stop?
January, that's the last one.
Are you gonna start that up again?
I'll look and see how much Mark has put in there. So there should be enough for February, but these slow months, I mean, that's why you only got one and not every week. So,
Okay. This is the time we'll open the floor. Mary, you had a question before. Do you remember what that was?
It was back on public records. Do you want me to go back to that?
If you want a question answered, you give it to me.
It was
and
really
I'll-
more about awareness for you guys. I already know the answer.
Okay. I just know you had a question, so I'm asking you to.
At the moment, the only ones that are in my head is what
already
she
in.
went through. So what the biggest one is, she talked to you guys about communications on your personal devices being public record, but she didn't talk about how long you have to retain that. So there are some legal standards for retention, statewide legal standards for retention of public records. You might want to be aware of that. The least amount of time I've ever seen is 5 years. So if you get a new phone, don't lose your records. Just saying. And then she also talked about electronic things or even personal. If two of you go back and forth, it's fine, right? But if three of you are in a conversation at the same time, that's a problem. But if two of you have a conversation and then one of you has the same conversation with a third person, that's still okay. Trust me, I've tried to fight it. It doesn't work.
Anything else, Mary?
Not off the top of my head.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure I understand the donor property motion. So you folks are still interested in that acquisition, provided the owners will either keep the fence line as the boundary or square off the west fence line?
We're not interested in the whole property, just the 2 acres in the corner.
We're interested in squaring off the property we have only.
So it'd just be a 2-acre purchase.
Okay.
Or if they're not willing to do that, then we're interested in the boundaries being the fence lines that are already established.
Along those lines, you guys talking about real estate, this whole endowment thing, every single one of those meetings could have and probably should have been in closed session. Just saying.
On your programs, I didn't get past 748, was that for the month? For the entire?
648 for the month, 17 programs. With 648 participants this month.
Did that include the actual programs or was it just schools?
It was everything.
Anybody have any other questions?
Travis, when you get school requests, I'm just curious, what percentage of them do they say we want curriculum-based or want them to align with state standards? I guess I'm speaking of public schools.
Yeah, there's a few requests for that, yeah.
yes, a lot of times we follow the next generation science standard when planning a program. So actually looking up the standards, or the teachers provide their Iowa core that they want referenced when planning those programs.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it. Dan, Greg, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Both same sign, motion carried, we are adjourned.